Just a little bit about myself. I'm going to be running as a pro bono, pro tempore candidate, which means I will not be accepting any pay, no emoluments, no pensions, and also I will be in temporarily, provisionally, until the Constitution has been overhauled and a new election has been called under the auspices of the new Constitution. Being homeless, I don't have the luxury of traveling around and attending to press conferences, media events. So I don't want to hoard all the media attention, obviously, but I am willing to share the limelight. This is going to be a grassroots effort. It's going to be up to the people to really decide whether this is a good fit for them or not. Being homeless does not mean I'm heartless or soulless, or definitely not spineless. I do care about America a great deal. I will not be asking for any donations. This is all going to be through the internet, and I will be basically self-funding myself. And apart from that, I've really prayed and deliberated long and hard about this decision. I know it's an astronomical long shot, and I haven't even told my children. I have 6 grown children from my first marriage, because I know what they would do. They would huddle up and say, "Paul, Dad has lost it. We need to call him up." And they would call me up and they'd say, "Dad, we're going to send some men with white coats to pick you up. What is your location? What intersection are you at?" So I haven't told anybody about this. I feel a little bit, I guess, like Moses was feeling before he went up to Pharaoh to ask that he set the people free. I feel kind of powerless, completely powerless, completely dependent on my Maker, my God, for direction. And I feel a sense of audacity, a sense of boldness in doing this. So it's a first. I think it's a first in American history. My motto or slogan is "Empower the people." This is not about me, myself, and I. It's about you, the people, retaking America back and gaining the power that you deserve. I'm coming to you as a pre-1776 patriot. What does that mean? It means simply that at that time there was no Constitution, and I feel that the Constitution has been shredded or shelved, and I'll explain that later. But I come as a pre-1776 patriot, as a citizen of California. I was not born here in the United States. I was born in Cairo, Egypt, which is just above Kenya. That's a different story. But I am not Egyptian. My parents were both Greek. My dad fought in the Hellenic Air Force under British Allied Command, and he was decorated for his bravery. My mother's side is all Greek. It goes back hundreds of years, so there may be a little bit of Spartan in me, I'm not sure, but I just have a sincere love for the Constitution and for the national anthem. I'm one of the few people, I think, that knows 3 of the verses. There's 4 verses in the national anthem, but I know 3 of them off by heart, and I can sing them pretty decently, I think. The last one is really of interest. The last verse says, "Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may this heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then thus onward we must, if our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in glory shall wave over land of free and the home of the brave." So, you notice there's the mention of God in there and the mention of heaven. I do not believe that we have a 2-party system. I think we have a 1-party system that's made to look like there's 2 parties. I think both parties, the Democrats and the GOP, have been influenced by geopolitical forces. by the globalists, definitely by cabals, by banksters, gangs, who knows. They're compromised, they're corrupt, and so I do not believe in a two-party system, but I do believe in the forces of good and evil. I do believe that there's a force for good, and I believe there's a force for evil that's headed up by Lucifer. A lot of people ask the question, why is God allowing all these wars? Why is he allowing all this misery and suffering? I think that's the wrong question. The question we should be asking is, why is Lucifer so hell-bent in creating so much destruction? Why is he causing all this scorched earth policy type of tumult and turmoil? Why do we have to be constantly at war? Why are people draping themselves in the American flag, the Israeli flag, the United Nations flag, European flag, whatever holy banner there is out there, and acting like wolves in sheep's clothing? That's the evil. That's the insidiousness of evil. You don't always see it coming, but it's carefully disguised and camouflaged. So I do believe there's a power out there that is God. I have written a little book about this. It's a philosophical little essay. It's called G is for Gods. It's on Amazon.com. But essentially what it says is that, we may believe in the law of evolution or the theory of evolution, and that's fine. We can believe in that. We can say that, there are certain species that have evolved into higher forms, into primates, although I have a hard time believing how fish have devolved back or fish evolved into mammals and then mammals went back into the water as whales, but that's another story. I have a very hard time understanding who was the designer of the DNA code, the software. So we take all these things on faith, and that's okay. It's okay. But let's assume that the theory of evolution is, for all intents and purposes, a valid theory. If we look at our progression over the last 500 years, let's say 600 years since the Renaissance, when Da Vinci drew his anatomical sketches, and when we had all kinds of inventions, coming to fore, we've come a long ways. We're at the point right now where we can actually replicate life. We have the ability to geoengineer, chemically alter, clone. We have the ability to terraform, the ability to control climate even. I mean, this whole climate hoax is based on engineered climatic events. But that's another story. We have a lot of ability that we've been able to develop over the last 500 years. So my contention is this. If the universe, or multiverse if you want to call it, has so many innumerable galaxies with innumerable solar systems and planets, would it not be logical that there are other habitable planets out there with intelligent life forms, perhaps more intelligent than ourselves? Could that be possible? I mean, we're willing to nod and say, yeah, there's possibility of extraterrestrial life out there. So if that's the case, let's assume that we have evolved to this point in 500 years. What could a life form evolve to over the span of, let's say, 1 million years, 10 million years, 1 billion years, 1 trillion years? Can you see where I'm going with that? I mean, if we can form the NSA and have supercomputers and explore paranormal events like, remote viewing. By the way, there's a branch in the Pentagon that specializes in remote viewing. People are paid to do that. So people have certain abilities, certain talents, gifts that they've been able to develop. Let's call them, God-given talents. And a lot of politicians talk about, developing our God-given talents. Well, I'm developing my God-given talent. I'm actually employing it right now, okay? If there's a possibility of supreme intelligence, a supreme form of higher intelligence We can call it whatever we want to call it. We can call it the source, we can call it love, we can call it the enigma, we can call it God, but still, it's out there. So the question is, why? It's not why is God not attending to our affairs. It's more like, why is Lucifer so intent on destroying the human family, the human race? I know Marco Rubio was asked the question, what is the meaning of life? Why are we having so many problems in the world? And I just want to encapsulate it in a very simple metaphor. Life is a little bit like going into an exam. You're in an examination room, and it's a closed book exam. You can't open the book, otherwise you're disqualified. So you're in there, and you got your book by your side, and in front of the class you have the professor, who symbolizes God. As long as the professor is in there, you're not going to dare open up that book, right? But let's say the professor steps out of the room. So now it becomes a test of character. It becomes a test of character to see who will open the book and cheat and who will not. Right? That's the test. And let's suppose somebody comes in the room and says, the professor just told me it's an open book exam all of a sudden. You can open up your books. Would you believe him? And that's what Lucifer does. He says you can bend the rules. You don't have to worry about it. You're okay. You're covered. I have the authority, you see. I have the mantle. I've been told to tell you that it's okay. So that's the kind of dichotomy we have going on in the world, and it is what it is. Okay, you may not believe in that. That's okay. I know the Luciferians and the Satanists and the Wiccans believe in Lucifer. We don't hear too much from them in this political debate. If you're an atheist, that's fine. I can understand why you would not be religious. I can understand why. There's so many scandals in these churches, right? And so many wars in the name of religion. And you're thinking to yourself, what is the purpose of me believing in something that's going to cause me to take up a gun and shoot another being because he believes differently than me? I can understand it. I get it, okay? But we have to understand the meaning of the word religion. What the etymology is. What is its root? The root of religion is from the Latin religare. Okay, we get the word ligament, ligare, to bind. So religare, religion, is to reconnect to the source. Not to, the organized religion which is trying to get us to connect to the source. It's to try and connect to the source directly. If we were able to connect to the source directly and be self-governed, okay, and be completely imbued with love, compassion, forgiveness, all the time, 24/7, 365, we would not need organized religion. The kingdom of God would be within us. God would be within us. We would be as God. Because He follows certain rules and He follows certain, parameters. He's bound by certain laws. So, I think I'm going to leave it at that for now, because every political system really is defined by its philosophy. Whether it's Marxism, capitalism, you have to have a base, a foundation, in order to go out to the people and say, this is how we're going to politicize this concept, this ideal, this school of thought. And speaking of school of thoughts, I'm definitely warning people that the non-duality school of thought is a very dangerous school of thought, because it says evil is good, good is evil, it doesn't matter what you do. At the end of the day, it'll all come out in the wash. But that's not how it works. We know that there's karma out there. Okay, we know that there's a set of laws that require us to balance the books at the end of the day, and that's why we have laws. We have laws. You know, you don't just transgress and not expect to feel the repercussions, the effects. You can choose all you want. You can choose what you want to do, but you cannot choose the effects of your actions. Enough said. So I'm going to be reading off this because there's so much. This is going to be my platform. And like I say, I don't have the luxury of going around campaigning. I just wish that campaigns were simplified. You know, you have a profile on a central website. All the candidates go on the website. They have a little video of themselves. They, you know, announce their platform. They explain their rationale. And people just go and look and decide who they want to vote for. I'm not for the circus, you know, it's only enriching the mainstream media. This is the kind of circus that advertisers love. So I just want to keep it simple, and if there's anything I would do in the future as president is I would initiate a referendum to reform the electoral process, the financial and also the format of elections. So here we go. My fellow patriots, my dear American friends, and my brothers and sisters, America has been and is in freefall. It has been in freefall for some time, but it really came unhinged after 9/11 when Bush put into place the continuity of government measures, which essentially tucked away the Constitution, shredded it basically, and implemented a shadow government. Now, the shadow government is still in effect. From what I understand, continuity of government is still in place under the Obama administration. And what that means is you have two layers of government. You have the visible government, which acts under the directions of the shadow government. So that becomes problematic because we don't know who is behind the shadow government. Who is it? Are these dual citizens? Are these globalists? Are they banksters? Who is behind the shadow government? So that needs to come to an end. That's a constitutional breach. It's a breach in the social contract. There's nowhere in the Constitution that defines continuity of government and its implementation. So if you've been wondering why all these unconstitutional executive orders, the NDAA, for example, why all the illegal wars of aggression, Afghanistan, Iraq, incursions in Syria, incursions in Libya, the funding of the Muslim Brotherhood by the Obama administration in Egypt. You wonder why, and this is why. It's because the Constitution has been basically nullified. It's null and void. And that is why someone like Obama, who cannot produce his birth certificate, or at least he produced one which was eventually determined to be forged, why you have such people coming into power in the executive. So it should be no mystery. So what was implemented actually in 2001 was an endless war on terror. And this was actually the keystone pretext. Okay, an endless war on terror has effectively silenced the Constitution and the voice of the people, and only aggravated the corruption in Congress. So a shadow government now directs the affairs of the nation. And my only concern here in running as president is the welfare, I should say the well-being, because welfare is a dirty word in some circles. I'm concerned about the well-being of Americans, American citizens, American patriots. I think there's a big difference between a citizen and a patriot. You have people who are born in this country who can't pass the citizenship test or even pass the interview, the immigration interview, which is pretty strict, actually. You know, one of the questions they ask is, are you a drunkard? So if you're a drunkard, you don't belong in this country, by definition. So there's a difference between being a citizen and being a patriot. Patriot is somebody who believes in freedom, believes in fairness, who believes in the American way of life, who believes in the original Constitution, who may not have been born here, like some of the founders, the framers of the Constitution. There's about 6 or 8 of them that were not born in the colonies. They were born either in England, Ireland, St. Kitts, Nevis. Alexander Hamilton, for example, he was born in Charlestown, St. Kitts and Nevis. So, a patriot is a total different animal than a citizen. And that's why I contend that, you know, the rules should be changed as far as who deserves to be president. We should amend the Constitution at some point where the natural-born citizenship test is no longer applied. So it is really time now to take the bull by the horns in this election. It's really now or never. We have to take America back. We have to give it back to the people, and I have some proposals which are really way out of the box. I've already talked about them in my other video where I talked about the Constitution, but I'm going to reiterate here. My objective, my prime objective, is to empower the people and eliminate the middleman. The middleman is the Congress. Well, let's put it this way. We need a level of discussion at the higher level, but we don't need the corruption. We just don't need that corruption. So if we can eliminate some of the middlemen, like the House of Representatives, and establish in their place a U.S. citizen's online account, which would essentially give you direct access, just like you have direct access to your bank account. You could have direct access to all the issues, all the bills that are under discussion. And there's, on average, there's about 200 amendments that come into discussion every 2 years. There's going to be maybe 100, 200 bills a year that are going to be discussed. So if you can take 2 or 3 hours every week, instead of watching, you know, Dancing with the Stars or American Idol, you can go to your computer and be part of the political process. You know, be involved. Be involved. So we can eliminate the middleman. They don't have to vote for us anymore. You have to remember, the founders did the best they could with what they had. Okay? They did not have the high-tech, you know, information technology that we have today. They didn't have teleconferencing, video conferencing. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have, you know, satellite communications, online banking. They did the best with what they could. And so they figured, how are we going to represent the people? How are the people going to affect the decisions of the government? The best they had back then was carrier pigeons. So with a population the way it is right now, we need to be able to get our government back. And I know it's a very hard sell. It's a very, very hard sell. And I used to be a salesman. Okay, I was a stockbroker for 8 years, and then I went into private equity placements, and also into or secure-backed loans. And so the thing is, you have to be able to think outside of the box and say to yourself, do we still want corruption? Do we want to go on the way we're going on right now and see things get worse as our country is taken from us by the globalists? Or do we want to take hold and get the power now? It's up to you. It's up to you to decide. It's a huge decision. I'm going to get into my foreign policy, what I see as the foreign policy of the United States in the future. And I love all people, okay? I love all people. I've lived in 9 countries. I've lived in Egypt for 5 years, Lebanon for 3 years. I've lived in Athens, Greece for 3 years. I speak Greek, French. And I've lived in France for a year and a half. I've lived in Switzerland for 4 months, Philippines for 4 months. I've lived in Nassau, Bahamas for a year. I've lived in Canada for close to 30 plus years. And I've lived in the United States for almost 10 years now. And almost 4 months back in 2003 when I was married to an American. So I love all people of all cultures. There was a couple here just a little while ago. They were kind of lost. They asked me for directions. He wanted to know where Venice Beach was. So I asked him, "Are you British?" Because he sounded kind of British, and he says, "Yes, I am." I told him, well, for you, Venice Beach is 2 miles that way. We had a bit of fun with that. But I love everybody. We have to understand our enemies are now from within. They are domestic enemies. The U.S. has been hijacked, it has been privateered and managed by wolves in sheep's clothing. I will not name them all, and perhaps in due course I will discover all of them, but I want to be very clear on this, okay? My topmost priority as Commander-in-Chief, if I was to be ever honored with that position, would be to protect the people of the United States from enemies, both foreign and domestic. And I want to alert whatever subversive elements there are to take note. You either retreat out of our lands peacefully, and there would be no recriminations, there would be no harm to you, or we will force you out forcefully. And I'm not at all afraid to use force. One of the sacred duties of a president is to inform the people, to educate them, to open their eyes to the reality of the situation, and to not be afraid to tell them like it is. Okay? It's not a popularity contest. It's about protecting the interests of the people. So, to a great extent, the president also is there to mold the character of a nation. And a nation is really a reflection of its commander-in-chief and president, as is the case with corporations. So, as far as foreign policy, the first order would be to reintroduce America as a neutral, peace-loving, but extremely lethal sovereign nation. I would not allow our country to be corrupted, subverted by either black ops or mercenary forces, globalists, banksters, ideological elements that try to subvert our Constitution and our nation and our way of life and our values. If it's a matter of cleaning house, we will clean house. We cannot afford to allow wars to carry on like this, to have foreign incursions and wars of aggression, where the only beneficiaries are the military-industrial complex. We have to also end the Federal Reserve. You know, we have to take control of our treasury. We don't have to have a gold-backed currency because it may create disadvantages for us eventually in relation to countries that don't have any gold reserves. And also, it's simply not practical. We have to back the currency by the good faith and credit of the U.S. government. The IMF also can no longer dictate to us the terms of our monetary and economic policy. Because the IMF is, after all, just a conglomeration of power at the top of the pyramid. And we will not be intimidated. We simply cannot allow that to happen. And any threats, whether they be military, economic, or political, would be taken very seriously, and there would be repercussions, and serious ones at that, which would not be telegraphed in advance. So the people of the United States have no longer any appetite for incursions, for phony wars, proxy wars, endless war on terror. Here we are, we armed ISIS by leaving them with 2,000 vehicles in Iraq with the keys in the ignition. We saw them traveling across the deserts. They were right under our satellites and we did nothing. And the Saudis funded them. And we are playing this kabuki theater with ISIS. For the last year we said we were going to take ISIS out. And here comes Russia, and in 2 weeks they do what we couldn't do in a whole year. And you got to give credit to Putin for doing that. They don't mess around. And he's a very wise and strong, firm leader. He doesn't play games. And I want us to be like that too. You want to be honest, wise, firm, and fair. The bad actors who have been taking us for a ride need to know that, the kabuki theater is over. They need to go peacefully, or we'll take them out forcefully. Because foreign policy really dictates economic policy, a nation's economic strength. And if we are spending the way we're spending on foreign policy, on wars, we'll just wind up like Rome. We will implode from within. And that's got to stop. So I would not endorse any doctrine or measures that demonize Russia or China or any other radical segment of an ideology, because all ideologies have radical components to them, whether it's the IRA, the FLQ in Quebec. You have pockets of radicalization throughout the world. And we cannot be knee-jerking every time we see them take a military stance. We don't need any more boogeyman all the time. No more false flags. And I will instruct the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to systematically flush out any enemies from within who operate in secret and foment wars. Along those lines, I would also be implementing a 9/11 Truth and Reconciliation hearing. And I think this is one of the litmus tests of the president. A Truth Reconciliation hearing is one in which those who were implicated, involved in the planning of 9/11 are to come forth, confess, and they would be indemnified. We would show amnesty and forgiveness towards them. If they, however, repeated those acts, they would be prosecuted under the full weight of the law. And if we discover that there have been, countries involved in this, other countries, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Israel, I will not name others, but we will have to just bury the hatchet and move forward. This is how you make peace with others. This is how you create peace in the world. You forgive. Forgiveness is a great healer, and we need to use it more often, especially at the local level, starting with our families. That's where it's taught. It's taught in our families. I want to make allusion to one tribe in Africa, and I forget the name of the tribe, but it's a tribe that has been known to discipline its criminals in a very interesting way. You know, people commit crimes all over, but in that particular tribe, if somebody commits a criminal offense, what they do with him is they don't incarcerate him. They'll take him to a camp with all the elders there, and the elders are going to remind this individual of all the goodness in him, of all the good acts, of all the blessings he had blessed his tribe with as he was growing up. And everything is focused on his goodness. They're focusing on what made him the best he could possibly be, and they don't shame him. And so that's how they transform the negative into a positive. I would like to see that implemented in our own society. I think people need to be reminded of their goodness. This offer for, you know, culprits to come out of the shadows for the 9/11 hearing is not going to be extended indefinitely. There will be time limits, deadlines. And if they don't come out, we will pursue them and indict them, and they will pay full price. So there's no free lunch. Now I want to shift my attention to economic policy. I was in a bus the other day, and I asked the bus driver, this guy was a big man, big black man, beautiful looking guy. He was there, and I asked him, how much is it for a senior's fare? I'm 62. And he said, well, it's 50 cents. I said, okay, so if I was a senior and divorced, he says, well, let me think. If you add the alimony and the child support, that would be 76 cents. So, you know, they got me coming and going. I thought he would lower the price for me, for Pete's sake, you know, being divorced senior, you know, but it went up. It's a good thing I didn't tell him how many times I have been divorced. Okay, should I tell you? Take a deep breath, Paul. Oh man, you know, I've been divorced 5 times. I've been divorced 5 times. Yeah, it's a major social issue with me. Marriage is a social issue. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've been single now for the last almost 10 years. And I don't mind getting married again to the right person. In fact, I don't mind having more children again. I think I've got all my plumbing working, and I should make a good dad, you know, knowing what I know now. But I met somebody really special back in 2007. Her name is Lori Fangenbush. Interesting name, but she was an Army veteran. She had been retired 32 years in the Army. She was a recruiter. I think she made it up to the level of sergeant. A brilliant woman, just brilliant, talented. She's a thespian. She loves to cook. She's an interior decorator. She paints. She sings. Just a wonderful, wonderful woman. She just had one problem. She was married 6 times. She was divorced 6 times. Last I know, she married again about 5 months ago. So she's in her 7th marriage. But back then in 2007, her and I, we decided, okay, you know, we have all this experience. We might as well make a lemonade out of lemons, right? So anyway, we decided to write this book together. We co-authored it. It's on Amazon. I'm not here to sell books. You know, I hate, you know, peddling stuff when you're campaigning, but I have to tell you about my life. So I'm telling you a little bit about myself. The name of the book is called 93 Things We Learned from Our Last 11 Marriages. Her 6, my 5. So let's put it this way, it was very therapeutic for us to do that. It healed us. It really did heal us. And on the back cover we have some great reviews, one by a marriage counselor and therapist, Jane Bolton, who has been awarded 4 times in a row Best Mental Health Practitioner in Culver City, California. She loved the book, she can't put it down. So, boy, you know what? I better stop. I used to be in sales. What do you want? Let's move on. We were talking about the economy, economic policy. That's where we were at. All right, here we are, the economy. In 2008, the American people were dealt a calculated blow to take them right down flat on the map. Okay, that was calculated. The subprime mortgage crisis, somebody knew in advance this was not going to be good for America. So they took us down. And at the same time, they expected the people to bail out the too big to fail banks. Right? And while they were doing all of that, they were systematically sending jobs outside of the country. They were exporting jobs to India, China, Mexico. Okay? That's okay. So we took it in the chin. They told us about the stock market going through the roof, right? How did the stock market go through the roof? Well, quantitative easing did that. Easy money. Pumped into the stock market to make it look like, you know, we're rebounding. But a true measure of an economy, global economy, is the Baltic Dry Index, which is really a measure of the cost of shipping goods by sea, ocean freighters. And at its height, the Baltic Dry Index, right around June, July 2008, was just over 11,000. I think it was 11,670, something like that. By December 2008, it went down to 660 points. Okay? If you look at the Baltic Dry Index over the last 2 years, it has hovered below 2,000. Last I checked, I think it was yesterday, it was around 450. Not good. Not good. With all of that, then we have Canada up there, whose economy really depends on the United States. They export 75% of their goods to us, to the United States. And you kind of wonder, you know, we have the longest unprotected border with Canada. It's over 1,500 miles. You kind of wonder, why is that territory up there sending us goods down here when we could have some of these jobs down here and not import the goods that they make up there? Wouldn't it be a better idea? That's thinking out of the box again, right? Wouldn't it be a better idea if we had a bigger and stronger United States and just invited Canada to annex into our union? I think that would be a great idea. It would certainly deter any other superpower from, you know, pouncing on us. Why not? I mean, what differentiates the Canadians and the Americans? A little bit of history. Did you know that the Canadians, alongside with the Brits in 1814, came down to Washington and just torched the place? They torched it. All the buildings. The Great Conflagration of 1814. And then the Americans, what they did was they repainted everything white. And that's why we have now the White House. The White House. By the way, I would not live in the White House for love or money, okay? No. I would not live in Washington, D.C. for love or money if I'm elected. I think we need a new start. I think we need to start a new capital somewhere. Maybe out here in California. I don't know. We'll talk about it. You know, it's open for discussion. But definitely not Washington, D.C. Not the corruption of Washington. I want America to start on a fresh page. And we're still reeling from 2008, the crash. But the time has come to settle accounts. And we are going to see for the first time in American history, perhaps, the trickling down of wealth from the top down to the people. Let me explain how we're going to do that. First of all, I'm going to implement an American prosperity tax, we can call it. And what that would mean is that for every transaction that Wall Street has, you know, because it's a casino economy down there, for every transaction, whether it's purchase stocks, trading stocks, bonds, commodities, futures, currencies, swapping of derivatives, you know, all those toxic derivatives that they're swapping between themselves, quadrillion, and we would excise a small tax on that, on every transaction. So we want a piece of the pie too. You know, it's time for the people to get back on their feet. I would also cut military spending by half. I still think we can project an incredible presence and project power and strength to the world. I mean, we have enough firepower and you know, enough nuclear power to mutually assuredly destruct the world 10 times over. That's what's going to happen in Wall Street. We're going to implement an American prosperity tax. We're also going to repeal Dodd-Frank or the Volcker rule. We no longer want concentration of wealth at the top 5 banks. We want the smaller community banks to flourish so that small businesses can start mushrooming and we can revive our economy from the bottom up. From the bottom up. That's the key. We have to let money flow to the bottom, just like you water a lawn, you know, at the roots level. We need to flush some funds down at the root level. And so once we get into a positive mode, let's say we have a budget surplus in 5 years, or maybe 6 or 7 or 8, however long that takes. And at that point, we're going to reinstall Glass-Steagall. So we're going to decouple the banks from their investment arms. They'll no longer be able to play that casino economy, and we'll be able to have a better handle on our finances at that point. How does that sound? Well, it gets better. I haven't crunched the numbers, okay? It's okay for now. What really matters at this point is the principle. It's the principle that really matters. You know, we bailed out the banks. It's time now for the banks to bail out the people. Okay? And I want to emphasize again, this is not a permanent measure. You know, just like quantitative easing was not a permanent measure. But we need to get into a budget surplus. We can't just have a balanced budget, we need a budget surplus. Now, during this reconstruction period, whether it's 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, as long as there's that American prosperity tax in place, here's how the taxation is going to break down between individuals and businesses, corporations. For individuals making up to $100,000, okay, there'll be zero tax. On anything over that, it would be 6%. And there will be no deductions allowed. For businesses, it will be straight across 10%. Okay? On net profits. And we also will need to look very closely at ending corporate welfare, all the subsidies. Perhaps leaving the subsidies in for the agricultural sector. I will also be implementing tariffs on high-priced items, big-ticket items coming into the United States. We need to have that under control so we can start manufacturing here in the United States again. And I know people are going to say, oh, you're an isolationist, you know. I'd rather be an isolationist than say to my countrymen, you know, we have no country. I'm sure China doesn't say to its people, we're isolationists. Hey, you know, that's a baddie, that's a no-no. Look, we have to do what we have to do. It's simple as that. And we can't let our technology being taken advantage of. You know, we can't be leaking our technology, our patents. You know, it's like a merry-go-round in the patent office. Everybody's there lining up to figure out what we've patented. I'm all for the paid family leave. I'm for caregiver rebates. I'm for zero mortgage rates or zero mortgage loans for the first 5 years. And I'm also for 0% student loans, and also with some provisions for reducing the loan if it's prepaid early. I'm also for a one-payer health system. I think if we have a right to life and happiness, we also have a right to health. It's got to be a given. It's got to be a given. And I'm going to repeal Obamacare, and it would be publicly funded and, of course, privately provided. I want Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid to be indexed, and it will be indexed to the top 500 CEO salaries. So, you know, you can't have it both ways. You know, we have to see the bottom 99% rise as the top 1% rises. And I'm also for ensuring transgender operations. I have a very good friend. She's post-operative. I won't mention her name. I don't want to disclose her name at this point. But we have a very good relationship. I've dated her several times. And I have good friends that are also same-sex. You know, I have a gay man that I've known for over 45 years. So I try to love everyone. I try to love everyone. I'm sometimes very hard to love. I know that, or I have been. I'm also for providing real choice to women. This is a new policy. I know that a lot of women must have an abortion. I say, you know, must, because they find themselves in a situation where they are 15, pregnant, you know, they don't have the means, the education to raise a child, so they have to give it up. I don't care what the situation is, you know, anybody can make up an alibi, a pretext for an abortion. They can say they were raped, they can say their health is in danger, they can say anything. So anyway, whatever. I'm for abortion only on the grounds of rape, a mother's health being in jeopardy, and severe fetal deformities. But be it as it may, the state will pay for the abortion, or there's a choice. The choice is if the girl decides to take the pregnancy to term, deliver the baby, we'll pay for the delivery. The baby will then be given up for adoption. Okay, that's the real choice there. I am for equal benefits to same-sex unions and polygamous unions. We have to respect their rights. We have to respect their rights. However, I am more of a traditionalist. I do believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. That's the way it was always meant to be. And we can't have every 5 years new groups, new minorities coming to us and saying, no, we have to redefine marriage. You know, we have all kinds of different people that love each other, right? Let's face it. We have adulterous love, we have ancestral love, we have pedophilic love, we have all kinds of love, same-sex love, okay, which are not part of the mainstream. They are on the edge, on the fringe. And we can't just be reinventing marriage every 5 years. So I would like to put it to the people. I would like to have a referendum, and that would then be the choice that the population makes, the people of America make, on the definition of marriage. And I hope that it is the same definition that we find in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which defines marriage as that union between a woman and a man. I really think we also need to put into the Constitution the right of children to choose what kind of parents they want. If they want to be with same-sex parents, or if they want to be with heterosexual parents. The children, we've forgotten about them. We have to remember they have rights also. Okay, let's not massage it too much. You know, we can't be sitting on both sides of the fence. We have to let people know that they have certain rights, and children have certain rights. Speaking of rights, you know, everybody talks about these days, you know, Black Lives Matter. Okay, certain lives matter more than others. Here's my take on it. We have segments of our population that require special attention. Now, in a hospital you have an intensive care unit, critical care unit, okay, where you find people that are given special care. The care is intensive because they have special needs, all right? And let me use a hypothetical example. This is very hypothetical. Let's suppose we had three-toed, freckled, red-haired pygmies from a lost tribe in Iceland that all of a sudden came to our territory and decided that they would live here, but they kept showing up at emergency rooms. All over the land we would see them, you know, lined up. I think we would spend a little bit more time trying to figure out what is the problem here. What's causing these three-toed, freckled, red-haired pygmies from Iceland to show up in the emergency room? Wouldn't you agree? I think so. So there are certain segments of the population that require special care. I would submit to you that unmarried black single mothers need our attention. I also believe that homeless lives especially matter. The aged and abandoned, their lives especially matter. The veterans' lives especially matter. So we need to be careful when we say all lives matter or Black Lives Matter. We don't want to enforce this idea that it's politically motivated by extreme left-wing elements. And I am for ending foreign aid, or drastically cutting back foreign aid. I'm for closing private prisons. I don't think shareholders should be benefiting from crime. In fact, they may inadvertently cause crime in order to fill their prisons. So I don't think it's a good idea to profit from crime at all. And I am for keeping English as the official language. We don't need to be the United Nations. We are the United States of America. I am for alternative renewable energy, solar, wind, nuclear, tide, even Tesla if it's possible. I'm for ending our reliance on fossil fuels, which have been the bane of our civilization. You know, all these wars are conducted in the name of profits, wars for profits. And I am for ending the engineered climate change hoax, as I said before. However, I am for opening up oil and gas exploration in Alaska, the Bakken, the Marcellus shale. I am for the XL Keystone Pipeline. I think that once we have an oversupply of oil, prices should come down and we will wean our way out of oil as we replace it with alternative energy. I am for 100% electric vehicles by 2030. I am for extracting ourselves from the TPP, which is nothing else but a sugar-coated extra strength cyanide pill which will completely destroy our sovereignty as corporations become almost nation states and can sue sovereign states for not allowing them to compete within their borders. I am for capping prices on prescription drugs, for revitalizing the Appalachian coal region. I am for legalizing marijuana on one condition, that health warnings are placed in big bold print on every package. I am for rebuilding our infrastructure, our highways, our terminals, our bridges, and also for building desalination plants. I am a very strong proponent of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment will never, never, never be repealed under my presidency. I am for actually invigorating it. I would like to see citizens be able to carry the same kind of arsenal and firepower that a private in the Army is allowed to carry. So I am for abolishing gun-free zones. I am for concealed carry permits in high crime areas and also in schools. I am for a database of mentally disturbed and violent criminals, and also closing any loopholes for gun shows. I am for a mandatory national reserve duty every 6 months for a weekend. That's for both males and females over the ages of 18. And I'm also for implementing a draft for 1 year, starting at age 18. And also, I am for organic farming. I want to cut our dependence on GMOs. I am for nationalizing our ports and territories which are now either leased or owned by foreign interests. And that's it as far as the economy. Now let me get into that very touchy subject, which is immigration. And again, we have to think outside of the box. We have to think outside of the box, because if we keep doing what we've been doing, you know, that's the old definition of insanity. You do the same thing expecting different results, and all you get is the same thing. The key to understanding my thinking is to really take a look at the Constitution. The states, as far as I'm concerned, have the power to create citizens, state citizens, and they may use their own citizenship test. It could be a test of character, a residence test, and it also could mean that, for example, a person becomes a citizen once he has entered into adhesion contracts with a state. Okay, an adhesion contract would be a driver's license or state health insurance. So anybody who has a driver's license or state health insurance is a de facto citizen of that state, because it's an adhesion contract. It's a contract, a social contract. And from that point, that citizen has the same rights in every other state. So he may as well be a union citizen, a citizen of America. Now again, we can implement different tests to create a citizen of America, but once you're a state citizen, you cannot be deported. If you look at the 14th Amendment, first paragraph, it talks about citizens, it also talks about persons. You would think they would use the same terminology throughout the paragraph, but they've made a distinction between citizens and persons. And the reason they did that, I think, was because they knew that inadvertently there would be people who are not citizens residing in a state. And what they say in that paragraph is that persons in a state have the same rights and privileges as the citizens of that state. Right? So that's an important item to consider. And we can sort of look at it from a logical perspective and use, let's say, metaphor. You know, if we had an orchard that was unfenced and travelers were hungry and they needed food, so they went to the orchard and picked fruit off the trees, what would we say to them? You know, you're guilty. You've committed a crime. They were hungry. Whose fault is it that the orchard is unfenced? Right? It's the owners, property owner's fault. So why blame the people? I think that once a person has made roots in a state, and I'm going to use an arbitrary number here, okay, just for argument's sake. Let's say it takes 2 years for a person to establish roots in a town or anywhere. After they have established roots, they should not be prosecuted or deported because they have made roots. Now, the states can also implement certain rules and regulations that make it impossible for a illegal alien, or I shouldn't say the illegal alien, let's say a non-documented alien, to function within the state. That's up to them. That's up to the state to do that. But once a person has established roots for 2 years or longer, then he should not be deported. It's inhumane. It's inhumane. The fault is with the state for not having built a border around it. It's not the fault of the hungry traveler. Right? So that's my rationale for that. I think it's fair. I'm also very much against people tapping into the welfare system who are undocumented. That's a no-no. If you're caught doing that, or if you're caught forging documents so you can, you know, assimilate into society, that's a no-no. You would never be granted U.S. citizenship if you did that. Ever, ever. You may be granted residence, permanent residence, but never citizenship. I am for a citizenship test for everybody every 5 years. You know, we need to remember who we are, what we stand for. There's people right now who could never pass the test, the immigration test. And I'm for revoking citizenships for failure to either vote in an election or to pass the citizenship test. I am for ending all H-1B visas. I think they're being taken advantage of by the corporations. It's just a major loophole. I am for introducing a minimum $50,000 investor visa. So anybody who has $50,000, you're welcome to the States. You'll create jobs, whatever it is, a mom and pop shop, you'll be hiring people. I am not for the $15 minimum wage raise. And I'll tell you why. Because immediately what that would send is a signal to all entry-level workers abroad. Hey, you know what? If you want to come in the country under the radar, we'll hire you for $10 or $8 because the people here, they want $15. So we got to think smart. We got to think in terms of what the dynamic is going to be. I also think that a $15 entry-level job is going to create more automation. I can just see right now McDonald's, you know, going for, you know, touchscreen ordering. I think they've already done that in Asia. I am for seizing the property and deporting people who are are here and who wish to establish laws that antecede or supersede or subvert the United States Constitution, you know, as benign as they may look on the exterior, on the outside, you know, we don't need Trojan horses. We don't need organizations with a veneer that have a hidden agenda. We don't need that. And as far as refugees, Syrian refugees, hey, I'm willing to take as many refugees as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar take. I think that's being fair. How many have they taken so far? 0. Okay? And provided also that we take them and then return them back to Syria, where they belong. I am for acknowledging Bashar al-Assad as the legitimate president of Syria and actually helping him rebuild the country, because we were partially the fault, the cause of all this destruction by fomenting radical elements and funding his rebels and all that. I'm being just fair. You know, I'm not here to be politically correct, as another candidate has proclaimed. And I'm here to reclaim the United States Constitution as the supreme law of the land and to give power back to the people. I will not entertain the option of being president if the House of Representatives will still be part of the system. I'm against it. You know, we as people, you're going to have to give me a vote of confidence. You're going to have to give me the mandate to create a new constitution if we have to, because I don't see, you know, I don't see an amendment going through the House or Congress that specifically intends to abolish the House of Representatives. It just doesn't make sense. It'll never happen. So, you know, drastic times take drastic measures. And I hope that gives you a pretty good idea of who I am a little bit. I want to make another video of my qualifications, my professional life, what I've done, what I haven't done. But this is basically my platform. This is what I stand for. And there may be a couple other things that I've forgotten to include in here, so you can ask me about them. But look, I'm not going to be campaigning the country. I'm not going to be traveling. Like I said before, this is not where I'm at right now. I don't have the funds. I'm a pensioner. I get a low pension. I reside in my vehicle. I'm very happy. I live by the beach. And you know, I would be giving a lot if I became president. But I love America. I want the people to have the power. I want you to be happy again. I want you to feel love, to have oneness in your families, so you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about, you know, where's the next paycheck coming from, and how are we going to survive? Are we going to have a job? Is there going to be a war? Are we going to be terrorized? You know, all this anxiety, the constant anxiety, the angst. I want to put an end to all that. And that's why I have, on my logo, I have a dove. Okay, the symbol of peace. May God bless you. May God bless America.